Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the next tutorial. This is part 2. So before actually starting part 2, I would like to point out a couple of things. If you remember from the last video, we set up a run configuration to run and debug the Nest application using VS Code debugger. There was something wrong with the tsno package, so the command in the previous video didn't work. I couldn't even get it to run prior to recording this video, so please change the command to this command right here, and everything should be good in this file. Next, I add a console property in the launch.json, and I set it to integrated terminal so that when you run the Nest application using the debugger, it will use the integrated terminal for the logins and stuff like that. So you will see your information, your console log, etc. One last thing is that I know that I stated that we're going to implement a SharedModule and a configuration service and a mapper service in this video. But I decided to add a Mongoose module so we can use the configuration service to actually connect to the database. And we are going to start writing SwaggerModule as well. The reason is SwaggerModule provides a lot of decorators and stuff that we're going to use on our models and stuff like that. So if I decided to put SwaggerModule last on the list, we would have to backtrack a lot. So to avoid that, I would like to introduce SwaggerModule now in this video. For those of you that don't know what Swagger is, just go to swagger.io and you can learn about Swagger. Basically, it's an API documentation for your REST APIs, REST endpoints, so that you don't have to use Postman to test your APIs, and more you can use Swagger to generate tons of things for your client, for your backend. You can generate your controllers. You can generate HTTP calls for your front end to use. Tons of things to use Swagger, and we are going to use NSwag with Swagger to generate our front end code. So let's keep that in mind. About configuration service, I am going to use a package called config. This is to manage Node.js applications configurations. So it is really good. And for your information, I built a configuration service to accommodate Heroku deployment. I use Heroku for my deployment a lot, so I'm going to use config. You can use whatever you want to. There's a .env package that is really good as well. So if you need more information on config or other packages, please feel free to read about it. Alright, let's start. First of all, we are going to generate a SharedModule, a configuration service, and the mapper service. So let's open your terminal. Go to your directory and make sure you are on the server directory, your backend directory. We're going to generate the module. Let's generate module and the name. So I call it SharedModule. You can see that it's create a SharedModule and it updates my AppModule as well. So I'm gonna generate a service configuration and I'm gonna put it in the path configuration. I'm gonna do the same thing for mapper, share mapper. So you notice that Nest CLI will look in the path to find if there is any module that closest to the path. So as you can see, the configuration service, I specify the path shared, so it looks for SharedModule, and it will update my SharedModule with these two services. And let's go back to the code. You can see that it generates my services, my mapper, and then my module. It also updates my AppModule with a SharedModule. So let's close this. Open your SharedModules. Before doing anything, let's add the exports array, and we're gonna export these two services, so we're gonna use them across our application. And decorate your module, your SharedModule, with the global decorator. This makes this SharedModule global across the application, so you only have to import it in the AppModule once. That's all. Right. Now we are going to need to install some packages. First, a config. I'm going to use Lodash. I just like to have Lodash in my packages. I might not even use it. We're gonna need NestJS Mongoose. We're gonna need Mongoose, NestJS Swagger, and Automapper TS. I believe that's it. We'll see. And I would like to add the type definitions for config, Lodash, and Mongoose in my dev dependencies. All right. So the way the config package works is that the config package has a method called get, and that get method will look for a config folder, and it will look for a default file name with, and config supports a bunch of different extensions. I'm going to use TypeScript here. You can use JavaScript, you can use JSON, and you can use YAML. It's totally up to you. And it has to name default TS. And the default name is like the dev environment. You can have a production, testing, and in each file you can have different configurations for your application. We're not going to deal with any deployment in this series, so I'm going to use default. I'm going to export a object with a host. It's going to be HTTP, localhost, a port. I'm going to use 8080 and a Mongo URI. We're going to use the localhost MongoDB, which is 27017, and the database name. And that's it. Now in the configuration directory, I would like to have an Enum. So this Enum is to help us prevent the magic strings. So because we using an enum to prevent the magic string, so the value of this enum is just matching whatever you have over here in your default .ts. You can have whatever you want on the left side of the equal side, but on the right side is string the value. It has to match. So port Mongo URI and Mongo URI. Then now go back to your configuration service. First, we are going to need a static connection string, and it's going to be from process.env and configuration dot or a get configuration MongoUI, and we're going to have to import get from config. Give me 1 second. It's 120. That's good. Okay. I'm gonna turn off my minimap. Okay. We're gonna need a private environment hosting. It's gonna be a string as well. It's gonna be process env.node env, or it's gonna be development. So the node-env is like a universal variable, environment variable to specify the hosting environment, development or testing or production, if it has that value in your environment. So normally on development environment, this will be null, and that's why I set it to development. But if you deploy it to Heroku, this will be production. And, we're gonna need a function called get. You can call this function whatever you want. This function is going to be the one that you use to get the variable from your config, and it's going to take in a name and return a string. It's going to be returning a process, a configuration, oh nope, name or get name. One last thing, I'm going to have a getters is development. It's going to be a boolean, and it's return this on environment hosting equals development. Alright, that's our configuration service. That's all you have in a configuration service. Now let's start with the mapper service. So for mapper, you have to import the package like this, and you're gonna have a mapper variable, and it's gonna be on MapperJS, on mapper, and it's gonna be a constructor. We're gonna initialize this mapper to AutoMapper, and we're going to initialize mapper private initialize mapper. It's gonna be a void, and it's gonna be this dot mapper that's initialize, and it takes in a function that takes in a config of type iConfiguration. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be MapperService configure private static configure config, and it's of type iConfiguration void, and that's all we have for now. So just so you know, this is my coding style. It's not, maybe it's not proper, or it's not the best approach. So please feel free to give me feedback, suggestions. I would love to receive them, and I will make changes to my code if I deem that suggestions is legit. Alright, now let's go to our app module, and we're going to start using that configuration service. We're going to define some static variables here, which is host. It's going to be a string, static, port, it's going to be a number, a string, and we need an isDef. It's going to be a boolean. The isDef variable is going to help us with, like, all these three is going to help us with SwaggerModule and a dynamic port number. We need a constructor. We're going to inject the configuration service. And I'm going to need a private static normalize port, taking a param with number string, it's going to return a string. So this function is to make sure that it returns the port number, a proper port number. Alright, so now we're going to assign the port to that normalize function, and we're going to pass in the configuration service get configuration.port. And again, the host is going to be the same, configuration service dot get configuration dot host. And then finally, is def. It's going to be configuration service dot is development. Now let's move on to man.ts. So the reason why we need to have those static variables in AppModule is because we cannot inject, or we don't want to have dependency injection in the man.ts, because all we do in this function, in this file, is just declare a function bootstrap and we call it. That's all we do in here. That's why we need to have some static variables in the app module so we can have access to those, especially this port number. So now I can just say app module port. And now if I run my app now, now my app is running on this port. It used to run on localhost 3000, but now the port is dynamic. And if you used to write Node.js application and you deploy to Heroku, you would have to do your port with process.env.port or 3000 or something like that. So configuration service is to prevent you have that kind of coding all over your code. So now if I go to localhost 8080 root hello, I will see my hello NestJS over there. Great. Right, so now let's move on to implement the SwaggerModule. Excuse me. And everything is going to be in the man.ts. So next, right after the app, we are going to need the I call it host domain, and we're going to use the AppModule.isDef. If it is development, then we're going to use the host and the port. If not, we are going to use the host. So basically, this will return me localhost 8080 if I am on development, and else it's going to return HTTP or HTTPS, whatever my domain is. Right. Next, we're going to define some Swagger options. We're going to have to import the file from NestSwagger, Documents Builder, and SwaggerModule. and this is going to be new document builder, and we're going to set the title. So we nest mean description, call it API documentation. All of these right now it's just optional, so you don't have to set those. Version. I'm gonna set a host, and it's gonna be host domain split. I'm gonna take the actual domain without the HTTP part. Now I'm gonna set the schemes, and once again we're gonna use the isDev variable. If in development I'm gonna use HTTP, if not I'm gonna use HTTPS. And I'm gonna set the base path to API. So this will be 8080 API, then root, and then hello. And we're gonna add a thereof. This is for later, but I would like to add it now. It's gonna be authorization header and build. So next we're gonna need a Swagger documentation. It's gonna be SwaggerModule.create document. We're gonna pass in the app and the options. Next, we're gonna expose our documentations, our Swagger doc, as with a route, and I call it API docs swagger.json. I'm gonna explain why we need this in a moment, and then just send the Swagger doc. So if I access to localhost 8080/API/docs/swagger.json, I would get this Swagger doc. This Swagger doc actually returns a JSON, an object. I mean, so that's what we're doing. Now we're going to use the Swagger module to serve up the Swagger documentation in a nice UI looking setup. It's going to be a route, API docs, the app. So the third argument is actually the documentation. So you can pass the Swagger doc here, but because we're going to use nswag, and there's a reason why we want to expose the Swagger doc as a route, so we can access it with nswag. So we're gonna say no for the Swagger documentation, and we're going to use the fourth argument, which is the option, to pass in the Swagger UI, which is going to be our host domain and API and docs swagger.json. And I want the explorer to be true. Swagger option doc expansion want to be list, and filter true. And show request duration also true. Alright, that's all we have to do for our Swagger module right now. Later you're gonna have to go back here and add some more to this Swagger options as your app grows. We're gonna do that later, so let's test it out. So now let's start our application again and check out the Swagger module. Let's run. Alright, so now let's go to localhost API docs. You will see like a nice UI looking Postman. So this is the Explorer. This is the filter option. And when you click on this root.hello, this is our endpoint, right? If you go to localhost/8080/root/hello, that's what you get. Now if I click try it out and execute, I would get cannot get. Why? Because remember we set base path to /API, but we don't, our application, that's what a Swagger thinks, but our application doesn't have the base path yet. So let's go back to your main.ts, and before you listen, just add a set global prefix to API. And if you restart, you will see that the application appended /API in front of our root. Now if I execute again, I would get the response that I'm looking for. Hello NestJS. So this is SwaggerModule. This will grow as we move on in the applications. Apparently I'm gonna go back to this in the later videos. So in this video we are done with the SwaggerModule for now. So now let's go back to your code. Now we're going to start on the Mongoose module. Now let's go to your AppModule. In the imports array, oops, I keep forgetting importing. I want to put this at the top. We're gonna import from NestJS Mongoose, and it's gonna be Mongoose Module. And in here we're gonna use MongooseModule.for root. And you can see that it expects a URI. So the URI is from ConfigurationService connection string. So this is the reason why we made the connection string a static variable, so we can have access to this variable from the decorator. Because as of this moment, we haven't instantiated a new instance with ConfigurationService through dependency injection. That's why we need to have a connection string as a static variable if you follow my approach. Again, I'm looking for better approach, more proper approach to handle this situation. So please feel free, if you come up with one, let me know. Thank you. Alright, so now if I start, my app's gonna fail because I don't have MongoDBs running. So I'm going to stop my application, I'm going to my terminal, I'm going to run MongoD to start my MongoDB, my local one. So now if I restart the app, my app will run. We can't see anything yet, but you can kind of confirm that Mongoose module is running. Is this line, Mongoose core module dependencies initialized, so that we connect it to the database. Great. So now let's stop. Now that we have the Mongoose module and we install the Mongoose package, I would like to take this time and implement a base model and a base service, so that we can have our other services extend from those model and the base service. So in your share, let's make a file, base.model.ts, and another file called base.service.ts. And for base model, I'm going to export an interface called base model, and it's going to extend the document from Mongoose. Make sure you get the document from Mongoose, not the document from the DOM. In here, I'm just going to have a created at. It's going to be a date, and updated at. It's going to be a date as well. Next, I'm going to have export a class of base model VM. It's going to be a create at. It's going to be the same thing. And date, and it's gonna have ID type string. Okay, so the reason why I don't implement this base model interface, because this base model then extends from document. So I don't want to have everything in the document in my base model VM. VM stands for view model. So this, like these properties, is going to appear and can be accessed from my front end. I don't want that on. I don't want everything in the document on my view model. That's why. And because this is view model, so we want Swagger to we want to make these available to Swagger. That's why I'm gonna add a API model property optional. And because this is of type date, so we're gonna have the type string and format is date time. I'm gonna copy this and again. So that's why I said I want to implement the Swagger module in this video. We're gonna have like a bunch of these decorators on our models later on in the next video when we implement our users and our to-dos. So I would like to implement the Swagger module now to have access to these decorator. You can see that is from the Swagger package. And one last thing I want in here is the icons, and I'm gonna call it schema options. It's gonna be schema options from Mongoose. It has a to_JSON and virtuals to, then getters to. There's also a timestamps options. If you set it to true, then Mongoose will automatically append a created at and updated at field to your schema. But with the timestamp true, the updated at won't be updated automatically when you update something. So I think it's alright to implement the updated at myself. So that's all I need in the base model. Now just go to your base service. It's going to be a class base service, and it's going to take in a generic type that's going to extend the document. And in here, it's going to have a model. Actually, it's going to be an abstract class. It's going to be a model. It's going to be a protected model. And it's going to be a type model of T. And mapper. It's going to be a type automapper. And we need to import that up here, automapper, this, and automapper. So now we want a private get model name, a getters model name. It's going to return a string. It's going to return this dot model name. And another one is view model name. It's going to be a type string. It's return this dot model name VM. And I'm going to need a function called map. It's going to take in a generated type K. It's going to take in 4 arguments, and 3 of them are optional. First one is going to be the object to map. So it's going to be of type partial of T or partial of T array. So partial of T, it makes everything in T is optional, so that we can pass. Let's say T has username, password, first name, last name. Partial of T can receive first name and last name, or username and first name. It doesn't have to be everything in T. The second one is going to be isArray, and it's a boolean. I'm going to set its default to false. Next is going to be a source key, and this is optional, and destination key. This is optional, and it's going to return a promise of type K. So this is for auto mapper. So I will go back here and explain what's happening when we actually use the mapper service. So I'm going to set a source key. If it's array, and I'm going to take the source key or this model name and append the array. If not, then it's just source key or this model name. Same thing for destination. isArray destination key or this view model name array. Not, then it's destination key or this view model name. Now we're going to return this mapper and map, and it's going to take in a source key, a destination key, and the object. So that's our map. So next we're going to implement all the functions to interact with the database. So all the base function, like basic functions, it's going to be like file. It's going to take in a filter, and I'm going to set this filter to an empty object. And promise it's going to return a T-array. Return this model file. I'm going to pass in that filter and sec. It's sync file1. Again, it's going to be filter. Promise of T because it's file1. Return this model file1. I'm going to pass in that filter in a sec. Sync file by ID. Take an ID of string and promise T. So before I write file by ID, I'm gonna write a two-object ID. Taking the string, it's gonna be returns the types of object ID. And it's going to return types to object ID and ID. So it's return this model file by ID, and it's this to object ID, and we're passing that ID in a sec. So that's our files. Now let's start with create. It's going to take in a item of type T. Promise T, and let's return this auto create T item and delete. Take an ID, turn that, return this model file by, then remove this to object ID and sec. And now update. Then ID string and promise of type T. It's going to return this. Oops, we're going to make a item as well. This model file by ID update. Move this to object ID, the item, and new choose. So I want to return the updated version of the document. Alright, so our base service is done. Now if I have a user service and I extend the base service and I pass in the user model, I would get access to all of these abstract functions and with the right type of type user. So it is a feature of TypeScript. And take a look back at the base model. Alright, So now we have everything's ready for our next video, which is going to be our authentication. I'm gonna implement a user module, a auth module, and registration and login using those two modules. And we have everything ready for us. We have a mapper, we have configuration, we have the bases. So let's see you in the next video. Bye bye.